Innovators, welcome back yet again. We are, of course, the Mighty Shed, pleasure focused futurists, and this is the space where we will talk about some of the key brand innovation topics impacting brands across the globe. So, without further ado, I'm going to head over to our very own AG. AG, where is your head at today?
I'm pumped. I'm pumped today, Mark. How you
Good.
doing?
Very pumped. Very pumped. It's a Friday. It's the end of another great week.
It is
Um, let's wrap it up with some chats of innovation. Boom.
exactly. There were some cool headlines this week, and one that caught my attention was the Global Wellness Institute has projected that this little thing called the Wellbeing movement is about to be a $6.8 trillion business by the end of this year, which is up 27% since 2019. We all know this. This is not news, but the size of it is significant, right? And I think if you think back to Carlsberg investing in Britvic, and then today Heineken announces they're investing in the G Spot by Gillian Anderson. Super cool, functional drinks brand, nootropics, all the works. They've got an arousal one, an energy one, a flow one. Super interesting because the brand is all about that space between pleasure with a functional twist. And their tagline is taste what pleasure feels like. So I thought, kind of in the spirit of if the world is talking about well being, I think we should talk about pleasure. So I took a little trip over to candy hunting, one of my favorite little Instagram hotspots. It's got about 500,000 followers, just to see what's the latest and greatest of pleasure hunting future lovers are out there. And here's the roundup I found. We've got Shake Shack has just come out with their chocolate Yule log shake, which is chocolate frozen custard, hand spun with chocolate cake, topped with whipped cream, cake crumbles, and sprinkles. On the back of that, Hostess of cupcake fame, they do the snowballs and the Twinkies and the ding dongs. They're launching candy canes out for the holiday season, flavored with their cupcakes. Crazy. Chobani Creamer, apple pie launching later this month. Reese's peanut butter cups have put an infusion of caramel in them. Here's a weird one for you. Baskin Robbins flavor for November is Brie My Guest. It's a cheese board inspired flavor with a combination of brie, burrata ice cream, almonds, pistachio, and apricot swirls. So I guess it's like everything you get on that little cheese board wrapped up in a cone. Frozen cotton candy grapes are heading to Aldi at the end of November. And add on top of that things outside of the food space directly, where you've got Greg's of, famous, good old, reliable Greg's launching a bling jewelry line. Like, how much more audacious, over the top does it get? And then my all time favorite is Fireball, introducing Crier Ball, which is their limited edition whiskey for the football fans out there that are disappointed in their team and they start to cry. And what they want to do is collect the fan tears, distill them down, and launch them into a big, old, limited edition whiskey next year. So I thought it would be fun for us to bounce around the idea of, in this world where it's all about wealthy living and we're going for the well being and we're taking good care of ourselves, there's still significant traction on the pleasure side of the equation. And I just think that's super interesting.
Sorry, Seawall, what was interesting there for you?
Think the super interesting part of everything that you just said, like looking at all of those brands, they're household names already. They're brands that we already use for one thing, but they're figuring out how to squeeze that extra little joy out of their products. It's like we're in this place where inflation's running rampant, things cost more than they used to. So how do you take the things I used to use as like my everyday reward and make that even bigger? Like how do you pull me in even more just to make me say, you know what, no matter what, I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna do this. Like I'm gonna get that extra hit of like dopamine when I have these what is it, the frozen cotton candy grapes. Or I'm gonna get a kick out of laughing about this crier whiskey because you know what? I support Man United and it's not been a good year for us. So being able to
Collect
just
those
that
tears,
extra
baby.
yeah, it's like being able to poke fun at it but also create another moment of enjoyment for the consumer, I think is super smart when it comes to like all of these brands and taking traditional SKUs that they have and just adding a little more joy to them.
Mm. I think as well, like the thing I just started smiling more the longer you went on there, AG, because the more you hear, the more you're just like, yes, I want to try that. That's interesting. And it's all just because I like that they've all released their boundaries and are just willing to play with flavor, formats, and just have fun with their audience. Like, would I want to drink Manchester United fans' tears as a Liverpool fan? Kind of, yeah. I feel like it would be quite empowering. But I think that's it, right? It's that when so many of these brands with so many established flavors or products or portfolios actually start to clash some of these things together, either within their own portfolio or with someone else's, it creates this amazing experimentation where what's the worst that can happen? You just don't like it. But I tell you what, it caused a conversation, and there'll be some people out there that like it. And it gets a lot of traction for those brands because it showcases that, do you know what, they're willing to play with their food or drink, which is only a positive.
Yeah, and I think that whole added element of play is something in these times everybody needs. Everybody needs a little bit more of that added aspect of like play. It's always too, everybody wants to be a aficionado or like an expert or whatever on something, but forget all of that. Just enjoy what you're doing and have a little play with it.
Well, this is an example of one, but how I start my day most days is by eating the cereal. And I get to clash peanut butter and cinnamon cereal together in my bowl. And as a diabetic, it's got 0 sugar in it, but it tastes incredible. It's low carb and it's high protein. And I'm like, so as a combination of pleasure and well-being in my day, I get to smash things together because I love combining cereal. And I'm like, I'm here for that. That for me is well-being all wrapped up in a pleasurable treat, so to
Yeah.
speak.
You get well-being, nostalgia, all of it, all in one. Because it's just taking the act of having that childhood bowl of sugary cereal and using that to launch you into the day. But now you're doing it in a way more healthy way, a lot more thoughtful when you're doing it versus, all right, we've got Cocoa Krispies, we've got Sugar Puffs, and we've got Fruity Pebbles. What's going to happen if I put them all in a bowl together?
I filled in their survey the other week, and I did suggest to them that because I eat a lot of cereal at lunchtime as my first meal of the day, that perhaps doing a Monster Munch version could be interesting for them.
A savory
I
cereal.
could be here for that.
Mm.
The sheer
Pickled
joy
onion.
of going through the candy hunting scroll is like, first you get like, oh, that's interesting. What is that? But then you go through the comments and to see the love pouring out from so many people like, where did you get that? What does it taste like? Where can I get some? Are they going to bring that back? Is it going to be available in my area? The idea that pleasure and fun and the twists on the flavors and like it almost creates this same thing of what are they going to do next? What are we going to see next? What's going to come tomorrow? I just think that there's so much to be said for continuing to innovate in a world where we're all working pretty hard. There's stress in the economy. There's stress in our jobs. There's political pressures, wars. To get a little bit of that pleasure back and just own it, and whether it's mixed well-being with pleasure or just unadulterated pleasure, I think taking more time to actually indulge in that, consumers are really responding.
Definitely.
Yeah. And when you think about where it could all head next, I mean, it's interesting with the figure with the 6.8 trillion, because the well-being movement isn't going anywhere, but neither is our desire for pleasure. So I'm really curious about where we see pleasure going. Just it's in its purest forms. Like how far will it go? What do we imagine is out on the horizon for what we'll be pursuing?
I think one of the things like with the well-being movement and like where it's going and like all that money projected is partly due to we're spreading out well-being from just like adult lifestyles to how do I bring my kids in on this? How do I make sure that they're enjoying life and having a healthy life at the same time? Where it's kind of flipping from, making all of these horrible things for kids that are devoid of sugar, devoid of joy, devoid of everything that like we had as kids. And now like kids are just having like really horrible snacks. And when they have, that first time they have like a hostess cake or something like that, it blows their mind because they've just been eating like all the very good for you things. But like seeing some of that very good for you like translate into like this new movement of gut biome stuff for babies and children versus like it not just being for adults, like being on probiotics and all of these things, but looking at it for like younger markets and making things that actually taste good for them that that's good for them because we've come a long way from everything just being Kool-Aid as like how I grew up in the States with just Kool-Aid and you had juices to now it's like and my son just drinks water and juice. Like he gets a soda maybe once a quarter when he goes to grandma's house. But outside of that, it's like, you know, brands are now developing with that focus of like, okay, we want to give them the same joy that we got from these things, but how do we like, you know, bypass all the sugary sweets and we come up with things like Poppy and like all of these other brands that have the good for you sodas. I think that's a super interesting way of looking at like where the joy comes into it, but also how we keep that whole good for you, better for you aesthetic going, our value going.
Yeah, so that's one direction in terms of like clean indulgence, right? Give me all the indulgence, all of the lusciousness, all of the surprise, play, and fun. But if it's also better for me, that's one potential future.
Yeah. Also just thinking about that, just thinking about it from the point of view of kids, but then thinking about, all right, you have this Gen Z sector who didn't really have the club because the pandemic was going on. They haven't like really experienced alcohol like in the way that previous generations have. Mocktails have become cool, so now they think they're getting all of it without any of it. But what happens when they finally like take that first sip of a properly made cocktail that does have a spirit in it, and all of a sudden it's kind of like the same moment of my son having like a soda water and grenadine Shirley Temple versus the first time he had it with like Sprite and the syrup and all of that stuff in it. And he'd be like, "You've been lying to me." So like I'm waiting for that moment to happen too. Like when all these people who have like been on this mocktail move of like, oh, I've never had alcohol, I don't need alcohol type situation to have that first really good alcohol experience or like cocktail experience where they're like, well, damn, this is what I've been missing out.
Well, especially because you think about so many of those, the most pleasurable moments of your life tend to be ones where you completely switch off from everything else. Now, it could just be that it's like your favorite dessert that you like to have as a child, apple strudel, ice cream, bang on. But you remember those moments because like I don't remember anything else around them. Or like now, it might be that you love the pleasure of a quiet moment to myself at the end of the day, but I've made myself a Negroni and I'll do a little twist of my own special way. If there's Prosecco left from Sash, I'll do a Spagliato version of it. It's just kind of like, but it's almost, I feel like there's always a theme of well-being, health, longer living, great, but it's so conscious all the time that what are those moments of that can bring you out of the consciousness? And I'm not talking about off your face unconsciousness. I just mean like that just stop everything else. And it's purely because I don't know, you've drank or eaten something which has so many layers to it. Your mouth and your brain are just melting in unison. And
Yes.
it's like, how, yeah, do you know what I mean? How can you, and that could just be something, just one bite of chocolate for someone, but it could also be an entire night out of indulgence, and an 8-course, 10-course tasting menu.
At the
I think there's
wilderness.
just so much. Yeah, it's almost like, for me, there's such an interesting opportunity for those moments of release. How do you make them more available, more accessible, so that when people do get them, and hopefully don't feel too guilty about having them, that they can be almost like overloading your entire body and senses. Do you know what I mean? That it can just deliver something that, again, becomes so memorable and pleasurable.
Yeah.
You maybe slightly forget the well-being side of it.
Yeah, that reminds me of a conversation I was having this morning with Luca, little Luca, who's Burf's son. was my trainer today because my normal boxing trainer, it's his birthday. So he turned 57. I show up and I go, oh, this is going to be a hard workout. Because little Luca is like all of 69 kg and he runs me around the ring. I mean, it's just like ragged. And so when we had our break, I always try and get him talking a little bit longer just so I can catch my breath. And we were talking about something and he's like, Angelique, tell me what it's like in Texas. Because I look at these shows and I look at the barbecue and I just gotta go to Texas. My dream is I'm gonna go to Texas. I'm gonna like hang out with the Texas people because they just seem wild and crazy. But I wanna eat that beef. I just want to eat that beef. And I think that whole kind of travel tourism where going for that escape, almost beyond the Negroni moment, George, and into that, what's my full on escape is curating a whole holiday around this dream of hanging out with Texans and eating properly smoked and grilled beef like the cowboys did. It's like, that's his dream.
Yeah.
I'm here for that. If someone said to you, when's your next holiday? And you go, I'm going on holiday next summer, and it's a barbecue holiday. Yeah, it's 2 weeks. Yeah, do you know what I mean? I'm going to learn about it. I'm going to eat. I'm going to share things with people. I'm just going to have barbecue central. Like, I'm kind of here for that.
We actually did kind of like a safari / filming thing like that where I can't remember if we were in Dallas or Houston. We were in one of them, but like we went to this barbecue spot that was like the first woman pit master in Texas, and like we worked with her for the day, and we watched like how she made the meat and everything, and like we had barbecue there, and then the team that we were with were like, well, we got to go try Terry Black's, so we went to Terry Black's the next day, and then the next day we had like barbecue at lunch and then barbecue at dinner. It was just like a heavy 3 days of nonstop barbecue in Texas, and I would hope your trainer just keep up his metabolism because it will put you down. Having that much barbecue and it you need windows of time where it's like, okay, barbecue, I need 3 hours for a nap, then an hour walk, then I can do it again because it's rough. That's like my 30th, I believe. Maybe it was my 30th. No, my 35th birthday. We went I wanted to go to Montreal because the food scene in Montreal just looks insane. So I had planned out all these restaurants and I had people basically having 2 to 3 dinners a day. And we would start at 5 and work our way to 11. And it would be eat, walk a mile to the next place, eat again, walk a mile, go to the next place, have drinks, and then probably walk a mile back. Very memorable time. All indulgence, all joy. Had a duck in a can. Great.
Conscious of time, people. It's okay. Key takeaways from today, people. What are they?
From my perspective, my key takeaways would definitely be that it's an amazing time to play and experiment with your audience, with your products, with your portfolio, to create new things and new experiences that are just so indulgent, so over the top, so different that it just showcases, it offers a different moment in people's day that they can enjoy something that takes them out of their norm or being so conscious of well-being that actually, we're not all that focused on well-being. There's opportunities to play with pleasure and to really deliver it in any way you see possible, to be honest. The options are endless.
Yeah. And I would say focus on the little things maybe because you're already making something that sparks joy for someone. But how can you get that little extra dose of joy? Like what small, tiny innovation can you see turn it into a must have versus I do this all the time?
Love that. Love that. Yeah, it's just so interesting. I think that for me, the takeaway is, well, there's always the macro trends of what are happening in terms of no low alcohol and sugar free and organic and regenerative, all of these things that are serious and real. We've got to take care of ourselves. We've got to take care of the planet. We've got to take care of each other. But the whole reason we love to live is to experience joy, to experience pleasure, and to find ways to bring that to people with all of the tools that are now available to us in terms of flavor experimentation, format experimentation, collaborations, crossovers. I mean, I love the Hostess cupcake crossover into candy canes. It's like, it's so simple. I know it's a little thing, but it's actually like a very surprising thing. Just imagine what that's gonna kind of joy that's gonna bring to someone. Finding a way to make it all worthwhile, bring a smile to people's face.
Innovators, thank you for joining us yet again. We will indeed be back another time. But in the meantime, check out futurepossible.com, people. Inspiration for your next innovation. Goodbye, all.
Happy Friday!